This is Ken, and welcome to another episode of Ken's Travels. In today's episode, I want to teach you how to plan your trip on a budget. A lot of people ask me how I'm able to travel all the time, and the reason is that I'm cheap. I can do a lot of the same things that everybody else does, and I can save you a lot of money by doing it the way in which I do it too, just as well. If money isn't an issue for you, then you can skip this video, but I think that we all like to save money. It's no different than when we go to a grocery store. I like to keep a running tab in my head. I like to look for deals and specials. Obviously, there's going to be certain things that I want and that we need that aren't on sale, and we just have to get it, and we're going to put it in our buggy. But I don't like a sticker shock or surprises once I get up to the register. Same thing if you get a financial advisor. That financial advisor is going to tell you things that you need to eliminate and cut out. You may not like it, but in the long run, if it's going to save you money, then it's something to at least strongly consider. Starting with that, we'll start out with number one, and that is to get your passport. Getting your passport is a sense of pride. Once you have that passport, you're going to want to travel. You're not just going to want to let it sit there until you get it. You're going to continue to make excuses. So go ahead and get your passport. It's about $110, $60 expedited. Unless you are planning to go on a trip immediately within the next couple of weeks, I would strongly advise against paying for the expedited fee. I believe that it's a complete ripoff. Basically, my trip was 5 weeks away, and I took a gamble, and I didn't pay for expedited, and I got my passport 13 days after I paid for it, and I did not pay for expedited, as I said. I also felt confident in doing this because some of the other people who did the same thing, they said they got their passport in about 2 weeks. Once you get that passport, as I said, it is a sense of pride, like when you get your driver's license. If you get your driver's license, you're going to want to drive, or you're going to want to borrow your parents' car, or you want to get your own car, but having that license changes everything. Same thing as getting the college degree changes everything. You're going to want to find a job in your field. So having that physical object in your hand is going to change your mindset. So just go ahead and get it out of the way. Here's my passport. I bought a protective cover for it, but this is basically what it looks like. And when you open it up, this is kind of like what it looks like once you get it, covering up some of that there. And also, one of the things that we like to brag about, those of us who travel, is we say it's like body tattoos when we get our passport stamped. As you can see, I have quite a few now, and I hope and intend to get a lot more in the future. Number two, once you have your passport, you need to decide where it is that you're going to go. Are you going to go to South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, Antarctica? Decide where you want to go. You'll be shocked at the number of people you ask, well, if you could travel, where would you like to go? And a lot of them say, I don't know. Well, you need to figure that out, especially once you have your passport. You just don't spin the wheel and say, hey, wherever it lands, I'm going to go to. And also, when you decide where you're going to go to, are you going to go to one country, 2 countries, 5 countries? This is something that you need to take into consideration as well. I would strongly suggest that on your first trip, you go somewhere safe, like let's say London, because they speak English there. You can get a feel for a new country, a new culture, and the natives speak the same language that you do, versus going somewhere where you don't have a clue at all and you're completely afraid, lost, and overwhelmed. But again, that's totally up to you. Once you do that, we're going to skip to number 3, and that is set up airline alerts. There are certain airline sites such as Hopper. I believe there's Google Flights, there's Kiwi.com. Basically, these sites, when you decide where you want to go to, you're going to go in there and input the date that you're going, and then it's going to tell you what flights are leaving that day. You want to be careful sometimes, though, because what might seem like a cheap and ideal flight, you might have to catch 4 different airlines, and of course you don't want to do that if you can help it. Basically, when you set up the alert, whenever the price goes up or fluctuates, or if it goes down, you're going to get an email alert, and it's going to tell you exactly where it is that you're going and how much the price would be. So initially, when you were going to get a ticket, it may have been $600, but if you wait maybe 3 months later, it might just be $350. I can't speak for all of you, but I'd rather pay $350 versus $600. Number 4, find places that are centrally located. So what I mean by that is, don't take a trip to South America and then go to Africa and then go to Asia and then go to Europe. One, that's too much going around and traveling. Those are long stretches of airtime. What you want to do is find the central location. Let's say if you're going to take a trip to Europe, and for the most part you want to stay in Europe. Now, this last time I did go to Israel, but it almost was like a circle. So I started in Amsterdam, then I went to Rome, then I went to Israel, and I went to Berlin. It's almost like a circle, but it's all in the same area. And by you sticking to the same area, you're going to save a lot on airline fares versus, like I said, going from South America to Europe. It's going to be a lot more money because that's a further distance away. Number 5. You basically want to pay for one way now. And the reason that I would advise that is if you get your round trip ticket now, what if you want to make tweaks or adjustments later and you can't do that? Or what if you want to add a city later? Then you're going to have to try to reach out to the airline, make those tweaks and adjustments. And who wants to be bothered with that? So for example, when I went to London, I decided that I was going to go to Paris too just as well. If I would have got a round trip ticket, more than likely I would have got a round trip ticket from London. So I would have went from Pittsburgh to London and then from London back to Pittsburgh, where I would have had to catch a train from London to Paris, and then I would have to catch a train back from Paris to London just to go back to Pittsburgh. Instead, I said, I'll catch the plane to London, then I'll catch the train to Paris, and then I'll just leave from Paris to come back to Pittsburgh. That money that I was going to spend on that train back to London, I could put towards my plane fare going back to Pittsburgh from Paris instead. Another situation was on my last trip, I flew to Amsterdam at first, and then, like I said, I went to Rome, Israel, and then Berlin. And I flew out from Berlin to get back home instead of Amsterdam. So I would suggest get one way just because you may want to make tweaks and adjustments to it later. Whenever possible, for number 6, I would say to use Budget Airlines. I know that some people don't like to use airlines such as Spirit, such as Allegiant, JetBlue, Southwest Airlines. Those airlines are perfectly fine. It might be a slightly different experience from some of the major ones, but in general, those airlines are perfectly fine, and you'll be able to save a lot more money that way. Well, for example, just like the same in Europe, they have certain budget airlines such as EasyJet, Ryanair, Vueling, and you can use those and save a ton of money by being able to just put aside some of the little bouginess and just go with the budget airline. It's no different than some people refuse to get generic drugs versus the name brand ones, or some people have to have $150 tennis shoes instead of $80 tennis shoes when they all fit on and wear the same on your feet. It comes down to personal preference, but if you can save money there, your trip's going to be very expensive as is. Attempt to save that money. For example, when I went to Amsterdam, Rome, Israel, and Berlin, I used Budget Airlines. For me to get from Amsterdam to Rome, it was $60. For me to get from Rome to Israel, it was $60. For me to get from Israel to Berlin, it was $60. People would never imagine that. If I was able to tell people that I was able to go to 3 different countries for less than $200 on airlines, they would never believe that. They would have swore up and down that I spent an arm and a leg, and I didn't. Again, just put some of that bouginess aside a little bit, and you can save a ton of money, have an amazing experience, and nobody's any the wiser. Leading into my next point, number 7, is what you're using these budget airlines. Obviously, you're getting that cheap price. However, they're going to itemize the hell out of everything. So basically, they may charge you for seats, specific seats. They may charge you for luggage. And what I like to do is I just focus on getting a ticket at first, and later on at a later date, I go back and add luggage. And the reason being is because I just want to get the ticket out of the way. I may change my mind as far as my seating or what I'm taking luggage-wise or anything else, and so I just deal with it later. Again, if you're planning far enough in advance, you can attempt and afford to be able to make those subtle changes at a later point and a later date. Or you may have booked 2-3 different airlines that same night, and you didn't want to pay for the luggage because the luggage may add another $150 to your fees, for example. So you might not want it to pay at that date. Just go back at a later date and pay it. It's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to change anything. You just trying to make it work around your budget and how it'll work best for you. Number 8, use Airbnbs and hostels. One of the main reasons I say this is because a lot of times with hotels, they can end up getting you real good. Once we went to Miami Beach and we stayed at this hotel, and once we got there, they were charging us a $400 deposit fee. That $400 could have been part of your spending money, and you weren't aware of that. And a lot of times when you call your bank, you can't always get that money right back. They want you to wait 2-3 days. They want to wait until after you're checked out to see if there's a hold. Certain banks can make you wait up to 10 days to get that money back. And let's just say you went on a trip and you visited 4 different countries, and each of those hotels are charging you different deposit fees. So one in this situation was for $400, another one could be for $200, another one could be for $100, and another one could be for $50. Right there, that's $750 out of your spending money that you had no clue was going to happen or take place. That could completely ruin your trip, and you don't want that to happen. There are some exceptions, but with Airbnb, for example, you don't have to worry about that. The upfront costs are pretty much right there up front, and there are no tricks or there's no unexpected things that you're going to have to deal with later at some point. And so that's kind of like what you would prefer and what you like. A lot of times also, I've just found for me, myself, that Airbnbs can be a lot cheaper than hotels, whereas I could get 2 nights with the Airbnb for $130. Somebody else or somewhere else, you go to a hotel for 2 nights and you could pay $130 for each night, so that's $260. Would you rather pay $260 or would you rather pay $130? For me, I'd rather pay the $130, but again, it's all up to you and what you want. Same thing with hostels. Now, like I said, I'm not going to lie, I didn't particularly care for the hostels because I really don't like sharing rooms with strangers. You're worried about someone's going to steal your stuff. You have to lock your stuff up. There's some weirdos that are in some of your rooms. There's some people that you just don't mesh well with. There's people who have bad sleeping habits. There's so many different scenarios. And then especially like you're older, I'm a little bit older, so when you're around a lot of these younger kids or people that's in teenagers or their early 20s, sometimes it can be a lot to deal with. So to each its own, but at the same time, you can save an incredible amount of money at a hostel, and on top of that, a lot of times they're centrally located. So not only are you saving a ton of money, you're also at a position that's centrally located. Again, it's not my thing, but again, I wouldn't hesitate to do it again because it was really convenient and can save you a lot of money. Number 9, get yourself a visitor's pass. A lot of cities these days have these visitor passes, and what it does is you pay a set amount depending on the place you could go. Like one place might be $30, for example, another place might be $100. But what that visitor's pass does is it gets you access to some places. It could be 20 different museums and places or attractions. Another place it might be 80. A lot of times it gives you like free walking tours. It'll give you a hop on hop off tour. Even for the places that it doesn't get you in, it'll give you a lot of discounts to other places that it doesn't include. It'll give you discounts to different restaurants, for example. And also another cool thing about it is that for a little bit additional money, you can also add a travel card to the package. So on that same card, you'll have a situation where you'll be able to ride the bus, the tram, and all the other means of transportation completely free for the duration of your stay. And that helps, especially like when you're going to a foreign country. The last thing you want to do is get to the airport and you're trying to catch the metro and you're trying to figure out their machine. That happened to me in Paris. It was in French. I didn't know what the hell I was reading, and there was a line forming behind me, and they were getting all mad and they were getting impatient. Had I just got that city card from the door, all I had to do is just go right to the metro and just scan my card, and I would have been on my way. What you have to do is figure out for yourself is where do you plan on going and how many places do you plan on visiting, and if you have enough get up and go about you to actually go see these places. And then you have to determine if that card, based on the places that it'll allow you into, if that card is beneficial or not towards you. Part of why it's beneficial to me mainly is because of the travel aspect of it. But then on top of that, if there's other places that I want to visit, then that's an added plus too, in addition. I had got the London card before, and it got me free transport, but it also got me into the Shore, it got me into the London Zoo, it got me into the HMS Belfast, it got me into the London Bridge, it got me into the Tower of London. So by the time you do all that and having to buy all those tickets separately, to me it was very, very convenient, and I was glad that I did it, and I would suggest it's something that you should seriously look into as well. Number 10, use Google and YouTube. Google and YouTube could be some of your easiest and best resources whenever you're planning a trip. You could Google something like top 10 places to visit in Ireland, top 10 places to visit in Ireland using YouTube instead of Google, and it's going to give you a wealth of information. As you read a bunch of different articles, each article is probably going to give you some different information that you can use to make everything that much more easier. Especially on YouTube, there's a whole community of people who just post travel videos like I'm doing myself now. I've learned a lot from them, and hopefully I can give you some hints and tips as well. They'll give you the best restaurants to eat. They'll give you the best places to stay. They'll give you the best landmarks to watch and visit. They'll give you the best historical sites to go to. They just give you a wealth and plethora of information that you normally wouldn't know about or have access to. So don't pass up the opportunity to use those and take it to your advantage. Number 11, use sites like Viator, Get Your Guide, and Civitas. These sites are a lazy man's dream. If you don't want to do the hard work researching and looking for things, you can use these sites and you can pay them and they'll take you on tours. You can go on a walking tour, for example, and it could be a 3-hour walking tour throughout the city of Spain, for example, and it could be maybe $25-30, but at least you don't have to worry about doing it on your own, or somebody who's resourceful or someone who's knowledgeable about the area. They can answer your questions and they can give you a rundown of the history, its past, its present, its future, etc. Also, you can use these same apps, say if you want to go surfboarding, if you want to go horseback riding, if you wanted to do a pub crawl where you meet up at 10 p.m. with 15-20 other people and you go to 5 different clubs throughout the course of the night, where some places offer you free shots, etc. There's also options where, let's say if you're staying in Tel Aviv, you can pay for a tour. They'll come pick you up, take you on an air-conditioned tour bus. They'll take you to Jerusalem. They'll give you a tour of Jerusalem, and they'll bring you back to Tel Aviv. Like I say, it's a lazy man's dream. And also, even if you're not lazy, it's a way to explore other regions and other parts that you ordinarily wouldn't know about or even think to do of. Number 12, use the bus, tram, metro, etc. whenever possible. A lot of times people are scared to go to another country or another place and use their public transportation, but why? Again, so much of this involves conquering your fears. It's about the excitement, going to a new place. Immerse yourself into their culture, immerse yourself into their city. Ride along a subway or a tram with other passengers and just experience what it's like to live, like, for example, as a Parisian. A lot of times people who have driver's license and who have cars, they don't want to use public transportation. They'd rather go to another city, rent a car. First of all, with that situation, you don't know the city. You could get lost. You don't know how the parking availability is going to be. You don't know where to park. Some of these countries also require that you have an international driver's license, which I'm sure most of you don't have. You don't have to deal with that if you basically just use the public transportation. If you get over your fears and stop looking down on public transportation. There's millions and millions and millions of people who use public transportation every single day. And just because you have some bad ideas about it or even some bad experiences by it does not mean that it's not the best resource to use. I always try to tell people when I went on my last trip, I spent $78 altogether on transportation and I went to those 5 countries. If I would have caught taxis and Ubers everywhere, especially taxis, let's just say on average, a taxi from the airport to wherever you're staying at is anywhere between $30 and $50. So we'll do averages and we'll say it's $40 each way. If I would have used a taxi and just caught a taxi from airport to place to place to place to place to where I'm staying at, that would have been about $400. Now you tell me, would you rather spend $78 or would you rather spend $400? I don't know about you, but I'd rather spend the $78. But again, to each his own. You have to do what works best for you. I don't want to lead you on a course in which you're not comfortable with and what you don't want to do. But to me, that's just crazy to choose 400 over 78, for example. Number 13, you want to try to leave from a major hub. So don't try to fly back home from Uzbekistan all the way back to the States. Instead, when it's time to leave Uzbekistan, stay in London maybe for 2 days and then fly out from London to go back to the States. What you'll find is if you stay in Uzbekistan and try to fly back home, it's going to be a hell of a lot more expensive to get all the way home versus if you would have been at a major hub. Some of the major hubs would be like London, Paris, Berlin. Same thing here in the States. Some major hubs would be like New York, Atlanta, Hartsfield Airport. You basically want to be in a place where you have as many options as possible to get back home, especially with Budget Airlines, etc. That way you can save a lot of money. And also, if you leave from Uzbekistan and come back to the States, anyway, more than often than not, you're going to have to go back to a major hub anyway just to get back home. So either way, you're still going to end up going to that major hub one way or another most times. Number 14, Get some currency in advance. I have several different debit cards, and one of the ones I use is Bank of America. I either use the app where I go onto the website and I will order whatever currency for the country I'm going to in advance. Basically, that way when you get to said country, you have money from the door. You don't have to worry about currency exchanges. You don't have to worry about finding it. You don't have to worry about if you're getting scammed. You don't have to worry about if they're jacking up the fees, etc. You feel a little bit more comfortable if you have at least some money in your pocket. And also, going to ATMs and everything else overseas, that's one of the most frustrating parts about being overseas is the exchange rates and the fees on top of fees on top of fees that they charge you. Once I went to an ATM in London and I went to withdraw $50 and it charged me $25 to borrow that $50. You do not want to be caught into a situation like that. So even if it's nothing more than $100 to start, try to get some local currency in advance of going on your trip. And lastly, for number 15, I would say try to pay for everything in advance and pay for it like check by check. So with one check, you may get your one-way ticket to Paris. With another check, you may get your visitor's pass. With another check, you may buy one of the tours from Viator or get your guide. With another check, you may pay for your luggage, and so on and so forth. If you look at it from the door when people say traveling is so expensive, it's like, yeah, it's going to be expensive if you try to pay everything at once. So instead, just pay for it little by little, paycheck by paycheck. Even if you need to make a chart at home, hey, this check, I'm going to get this check, I'm going to get that, this check, I'm going to get this, and keep a running tab in total all the way until it's time for you to take your trip. I'm telling you, it will save you a lot of money, and it'll save you a lot of time, and you won't be as nearly as stressed if you can just do it little by little versus all up front at once. So that concludes another episode of Ken's Travels. Where do you plan on traveling, and do you have any budget trips that you'd like to share that you think that would be better than anything that I suggested, or just some things that I might not have even mentioned at all? Let me know in the comments, like, subscribe, and until the next time.